Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back to Monster Hunter World. This is the game that brought casuals like me, yes, filthy casuals like me, into the mainline series. After this, I would pick up Monster Hunter Rise on day one. And after that, no doubt I'm picking up Monster Hunter Wilds when it comes out February 28th. Cannot wait. I've actually stayed away from the beta because I just want to experience it all on my own for the first time, completely unfettered. But today we're going back to the last mainline entry, if you will. Now, that's no disrespect to Rise, but when you look at kind of how Monster Hunter evolved as a series, you know, World was like all consoles. It was available everywhere, whereas Rise started off as like a Nintendo exclusive and it was fantastic. But I really wanted to go back to World, mostly because this was the series entry that I think broke things wide open. Like I mentioned, it brought people teetering on the edge like me in. I was first introduced to Monster Hunter with Freedom on the PSP, which, if my memory serves me correct, is the first game on PS2 re-released in America with more content. So that was where I started my Monster Hunter journey, and I still have fond memories of that game. I mean, I can't think of many PSP games I don't have a fond memory of, but nonetheless, the simple progression systems, the boss-like encounters, learning the ins and outs of these weapons, getting very frustrated as a young kid on why I couldn't fight like Sora in Kingdom Hearts 2 in something like Monster Hunter, not understanding really what the point of the series was. I would always dabble in each entry as it came around. Monster Hunter Freedom Unite and Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate and Generations and so on. But really when it came to a big mainline entry that kicked the door wide open, I always look at Monster Hunter World. So I wanted to talk about this game because it really is to me the most special entry in the franchise that I think made things mainstream, but still maintained what I remembered about the series as a kid growing up. So I just wanted to highlight what I think makes this game so special in today's retrospective. So of course, I'd love to hear from you. What's your favorite entry in the Monster Hunter franchise? And if it's not World, don't worry, because we are going to be talking about every Monster Hunter game in the coming week with the release of Monster Hunter Wilds. Yes, we're going to do remembering the Monster Hunter games, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll see you on launch day. But ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into nostalgic and retrospective content, consider subscribing. Let's start off with what really hooked me with this game, and I do think it is the seamless zones. So Monster Hunter always had these big zones labeled by numbers, and they'd be split up with a bunch of loading screens, and for me, that I understood it on the devices that it lived on, right? When I was playing a 3DS game, I didn't expect it to have these massive, open, detailed maps. Same, of course, with the PSP. But as we got deeper into technology, deeper into the series, I feel like what World did was so important for the series, because just having these open environments was not just about the loading screens and not breaking up the experience and the hunt that you were on, but it allowed for a much more believable ecosystem. You know, Monster Hunter World, you drop into these biomes and you're going to start picking up clues and tracking the monster you're trying to hunt. And what I love about this game is the dynamic moments that you'll encounter on your hunt. You'll find monsters you're not trying to hunt, and since you're on a timer, you're like, do I take some time to take that enemy out? Or you'll run into two monsters fighting each other. There's just so many different style of encounters. Like I always remember when I first reviewed Monster Hunter World on my Mr. Matty channel, the defining moment was when we were running around this first zone, just trying to figure out like what's going on here. And I just see my friend burst out of the jungle, running at full speed, jumps off a cliff. He's like, go, go, go. And all of a sudden, here comes like a giant dinosaur bursting through, going right after him. And it was this moment of like, then I jumped off the cliff and got right after him. And we just fought in this like open field. It was so cool. And those are the stories that we all share around the water cooler, if you will, or in most of our cases, the Discord calls, where you just kind of sell people on the experience. And like Monster Hunter World just felt so truly dynamic, and still to this day is, but also it didn't sacrifice what made the series so special to get there. Now, hey, guilty as charged. When I was a kid playing Monster Hunter, I would get frustrated oftentimes with its combat. I mean, I was very young and I'd be like, I feel so slow and stiff, and like, would it really kill them to give me more mobility? And in entries like Rise, I was so surprised with how much movement tech they gave you, how fluid and nimble you really were. Like, to me, that is the best feeling Monster Hunter game personally. But if I were to borrow a great descriptor from my good friend Gene Park when we were talking about Monster Hunter and defining Duke, Monster Hunter is a lot like a fighting game where each class, each weapon, if you will, is its own fighting character. You have to learn their combos. You have to learn what they're capable of, the pros and cons, and sort of what synchronizes well with your playstyle and also the playstyle of the group. But what I also love about Monster Hunter World is I talked about group for a second there. You can just play this solo and you can get along fine with it. Again, didn't really sacrifice what made the series special so that it could get more people in on the audience. It just embraced its personality. Something that I think a lot of AAA developers miss nowadays. They try to appeal to all audiences, and in turn, they appeal to no one because they're trying to be so broad that they don't hit the specific notes of a series that makes it special. In the case of Monster Hunter, it is those weapons. For me, I found my first love with the gun lance. The gun lance was such a fun time, right? Because in Monster Hunter, this is where I learned about slow and steady wins the race, but also that if you stay patient, the amount of damage you can do with the gun lance when you just unload on them is awesome. And each weapon has their own tech. If I'm looking for something with a little bit more speed, I usually look at the switch axe because that is to me such a fun combo style weapon where you have the axe and then you can switch into the blade, which has its own element to it. And when that charges up, then you can dig the blade into your opponent and unleash an explosive attack. And you want to time these things right because number one, these monsters have their own move sets, right? Again, it's like a fighting game. They have these own move sets that they're going to be jumping around the zone, getting away from you. Some can fly. When you hurt them, they're going to limp away, which I don't know. I love animals of all kinds. So like, it makes me feel a little bad when I see that. I'm like, okay, I know you're bleeding out and I'm literally chasing you to kill you now. Like there's a sense of quiet brutality in this game, but they have their own movesets. They try to escape. They hide in different zones of the map. You have to chase them down. Again, it's very kinetic. It's very dynamic, but it all comes down to those movesets. So for me, the switch axe really became my home of like speed and power and patience. And I just always had a blast with that one. Plus, it's got great sound design. So when you're like cutting through with that switch axe and you're hearing like the real digging in of the blade, I think that's excellent. But there are certain creatures like the Kirin, the electric unicorn, I like to call it. This SOB, I mean, I just went on a mission while I was playing for this video where I had to hunt two of them. Hunting one of them is tough enough in my opinion. Hunting two of them is like satanic. But these things are tough. They're quick, they get around, they'll run rows of electricity up the ground. And like, this is just one monster. There are dozens of monsters and we're not even talking about Iceborne at this point in time, but there's just so many monsters, of course, to hunt in a game called Monster Hunter. But I think what's so impressive is how it all comes together really well. And there's different styles of missions that you'll approach while playing Monster Hunter World. Of course, you'll go on your standard hunts, which are these big biomes that have all their own little ecosystems. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But also, you have like arenas where you'll just go into one circular arena. And that sounds great in practice, like, cool, I don't have to hunt down this creature at all. He's right there waiting for me. But what you don't realize is that you're in a very tight space, and now they get to just run you over as often as they'd like. One of the cute introductions here in Monster Hunter World was the Palicos, right? The little cat companions, and you'll see based off my character's name and my Palico's name that I was in my Dragon Ball Persona 5 era. You know, it's crazy to think how long it's been since this game came out, especially because it still feels so oddly relevant still to this day. I mean, Capcom really hung with it. The interesting part about Monster Hunter, and again, I gotta credit Gene Park because he described it perfectly, is it's like a single player game, but also an online game, but also like a live service game. It's got all these elements where, you know, you just gotta really give credit to the way the series evolved. Like I was talking about earlier, the stiffness in the combat, I think was something they needed to eventually shake off a little bit. And I feel like Monster Hunter World was the perfect in between. So let's use the switch axe as an example. So if I'm swinging away, and you'll see even in this footage, so I'm getting my feet wet again, there's times I'm just whiffing and I'm holding my left analog stick, hoping in the middle of swinging, I'm gonna turn toward the enemy. But that level of movement is not something Monster Hunter World allows. They say, yeah, you can move and attack quicker in this game, but once you commit to a direction, you're not gonna turn mid-combo. I think this is an important distinction to call out because those little things make you take that extra step of thought of, when I swing, this better hit. It's one of the few games that's all around fighting, but I'm reluctant to hit the attack button because when I do, I know I'm committing, and the amount of times you can leave yourself open to like a monster doing a tail swing and knocking you way far back is like high risk, high reward, especially if you're on high up platforms and they knock you back. It's like a really dangerous play. And obviously the reason you're hunting all of these monsters is for their drops. So what I love about Monster Hunter World as well is like the guaranteed level of drops. Like I couldn't get into a lot of the RNG that came with previous Monster Hunter games. There was still like a level of guarantee, but a lot of it felt random where like if you were targeting a specific body part on a specific monster, they will drop it. It's really a question of how many, but you know you're going to get something out of that hunt, which I think is what gave it the more addictive hook that I didn't have with prior Monster Hunter games, because I do think return on investment is everything in video games. I can tell you all about these classes. Like the heavy bowgun is awesome for like very powerful attacks at a distance. Meanwhile, great swords are really fantastic for up close, trying to damage parts of the body. Like for example, you want to cut off their tail, like a great sword or a long sword will really get up close and do that damage to that particular body part. But I think the best balance that Monster Hunter World strikes is that you don't have to just love the core combat of the game to get enjoyment out of it. Now you can really love the hunting aspect that I failed to fall in love with in prior games outside of the nostalgia of something like a Freedom or a Freedom Unite, where now with Monster Hunter World, it is that level of like progressing, trying to get all the movesets. And then of course, when you get into Iceborne, the mastery ranks, right? The mastery weapons, these unique movesets that get unlocked as you get deeper into that experience. I also think that Monster Hunter World was like the first, I would call it the first do everything game in the series. I use that term to describe the games that just blow open their feature set to a whole other unnecessary level. Like you can decorate your home in this game and you can put like little creatures that you catch in different biomes around your home. So you're just like one with nature in this game. So I just think it's like a very beautiful thing how they've expanded it in even unnecessary ways. You can go to a gardener and plant seeds. And so it's this very addictive loop of like some timer is always going at every moment that's about to expire at the end of your hunt. And so there's a lot of mixture of managing, fighting, and upgrading. And that really is the trifecta that makes Monster Hunter, but I think it was really perfected here in World. And that's not saying like games like Rise didn't get it. Rise has really good pick up and play capabilities. I love Rise, especially like the movement, the mobility, the tech, it's just wonderful. And when it launched exclusively on Switch, I was like surprised at how well it ran, but eventually, fortunately, it came to other platforms alongside Sunbreak, I believe the DLC was. So yeah, no disrespect to that game and how it evolved or older games in the series, but I think World really drove home a lot of key core elements for Monster Hunter and did them so well that I mean, you look at how viral Wilds already is as we record this before their release. It's insane to think about how popular this is going to be. I mean, did anyone see the player count for Wilds before it came out? Over 400,000 people in the first beta is insane. Capcom's going to laugh to the bank at how much money this game's about to make them, especially in more of a live service era than ever. Like you saw the evolution years before with live service leading into Monster Hunter World, but now they got a whole game plan for Wilds and it's going to be crazy. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the biomes themselves. Not only are they like really diverse and expansive, but I just love discovering all the little creatures that live within them and sort of the resources you can gather from them. But also the tracking in this game just is way better. You kind of have this insect that's guiding you along the way. So there is a level of like hand holding that's there. You also get a little bit of help from your Palico, which I think is really nice. You know, he can hop in and like do a little bit of healing for you with a spray, which is really nice. But I like that you'll track like their footsteps or claw marks or saliva or whatever's distinct to that particular monster. And again, adds to that dynamic, expansive nature the game is so well known for. So firing this up in 2025 is a little bit of like a warm-up, a little bit of a primer before we do our deep dive for the entirety of the Monster Hunter series, but also just looking at how far Monster Hunter has come. I mean, this game is just so appreciated for all it's done for the series and for me to kind of just pull me in as more than just a casual, but like an actual fan of Monster Hunter. So I adore World. I'll always remember the drop-in, drop-out co-op days with my buddies. Like even friends who I never thought would get into Monster Hunter got into it. And it was just cool seeing everyone find their class, find their weapon, that sort of thing. And so I adore Monster Hunter World. Those are my thoughts on it here in 2025. I'm curious to get yours. What do you think about the Monster Hunter series as a whole? What's your favorite entry? And what are you looking forward to most in Monster Hunter Wilds? Let me know down below. Other than that, I'll catch all of you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.